Why did Israel complain to Moses following Korah's death? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Numbers on Walking Through the Bible. If you have a Bible with you, turn to Numbers chapter 16. We're going to be reading from verses 41 to 50. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Numbers chapter 16, beginning of verse 41. On the next day, all the congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron, saying, "You have killed the people of the Lord." Now it happened, when the congregation had gathered against Moses and Aaron, that they turned toward the tabernacle of meeting. And suddenly the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord appeared. Then Moses and Aaron came before the tabernacle of meeting. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Get away from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." And they fell on their faces. So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a censer and put fire in it from the altar. Put incense on it, and take it quickly to the congregation and make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out from the Lord. The plague has begun." Then Aaron took it as Moses commanded, and ran into the midst of the assembly. And already the plague had begun among the people. So he put in the incense and made atonement for the people. And he stood between the dead and the living. So the plague was stopped. Now those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who died in the Korah incident. So Aaron returned to Moses at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, for the plague had stopped. In our last lesson, we had Korah dying at the hand of God. The reason was that he led a rebellion against the leadership of Moses, which really was a rebellion against God. God originally was going to destroy all of Israel because many had joined Korah in this rebellion, but Moses and Aaron got the Lord to relent. The way that God killed Korah and the ringleaders of the rebellion was unique. Instead of sending a plague or consuming them with fire, the earth opened up and swallowed them, their families, and all their possessions. This frightened Israel so much that they fled to their tents, lest they too fall into the pit. But as is human nature, given a little time to think, our opinions change on matters, which brings us down to verse 41. The next day the children of Israel came to Moses and complained that Moses and Aaron had killed the people of the Lord. Used in a loose sense, Israel was the people of the Lord, the people that the Lord had called out from among the other nations to be his people. But in a much truer sense, people were only the people of the Lord if they followed the Lord. Korah and his rebels spoke against Moses, God's chosen prophet, and against Aaron, God's chosen high priest. They accused them of things that they did not do, and thus were in rebellion against God. Korah and his rebels thus were not people of the Lord. Moreover, Moses was not the reason for these men's deaths. Their actions were. Had Korah and his men not come against Moses, they would have lived. Had they repented at the words of Moses, they would have lived. But no, they hardened their hearts, and the Lord punished them. And the Lord had every right to. When we sin, if death comes upon us because of that sin, not only can we not blame God, but we can't blame others either, and others can't blame others. We alone would have been responsible. For the second time in 2 days, Israel had complained against the Lord. And for the second time in 2 days, God was ready to destroy Israel for their out and outright rebellion. Moses and Aaron were warned to get away from the congregation so that God could consume them in a moment. Now the previous day, Moses and Aaron fell on their faces and pleaded with God not to punish Israel for the sins caused by one man. However, this day, it was Israel as a whole who spoke against Moses and against God. So that plea wouldn't work this time. Instead, Moses, seeing that the plague had already begun, told Aaron to take a censer, put fire in it from the altar, put incense on it, and take it quickly to make atonement for Israel. This had never been done before, and it wasn't commanded by God. It was an idea solely devised by Moses, which I'm sure he wasn't positive would work. The question is, where did Moses get such an idea from? From the rituals that occur on the Day of Atonement. In Leviticus 16, verses 11 to 13, we read, "And Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house, and shall kill the bull as the sin offering, which is for himself. Then he shall take a censer full of burning coals of fire from the altar before the Lord, with his hands full of sweet incense beaten fine, and bring it inside the veil. And he shall put the incense on the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat that is on the testimony, lest he die. Moses was thus hoping that if Aaron did this, that God's wrath would be assuaged, that Israel's sin could be atoned for, and all of Israel wouldn't die. Aaron did as he was told, took a censer full of fire and incense, and stood between the living and the dead with the censer. Aaron was taking his life in his hands here, in that God could have killed him too. But no, God's wrath was satisfied, and the plague was stopped. That was now twice that Israel had escaped death through the mediation of Moses and Aaron. The book of James says that the fervent prayer of a righteous man does much good. Even though this wasn't technically a prayer, the actions of a righteous man saved Israel here. However, 14,700 people died that day because of their rebellion, a number that was above and beyond the people who died the day before in the rebellion of Korah. Israel should have learned a lesson here, but alas, we will see them complain again a little later on in this book. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, I hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Numbers chapter 17, verses 1 to 13, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.